Yeah, this is a 1943 GMC 6x6 Army truck produced for the United States Army in the Second World War by the General Motors truck division of GMC. Top speed here is about 40 miles, 40 to 45 miles an hour. That's the best we can do. Then we get into fifth gear. The truck is powered by an inline six-cylinder gasoline engine of 270 cubic inches, a one-barrel Zenith cast iron carburetor on this engine. The horsepower rating was approximately 95 to 104 horsepower. The transmission is a manual transmission, 5-speed with fifth gear being overdrive. One, this is the equipment that we used to fight a world war, and we were successful. We were successful because we were a mechanized army, and this represents the capability of the American and American industry, and nothing in the world could touch us then and not going to touch us now if we put our mind to it. Young people need to see this as, and I say young people, I'm including people right up to about 40 years old, that need to understand that you know, we're capable of doing things like this. We can take the guys right off the street that are waiting for a bus, and they have the incentive. We can teach them how to do this and work on the production line, work in the factories, produce vehicles of this nature. But this is what we use to win the war, because we got the gas to Patton's tanks. The Germans could not get their gas to their tanks. They ran out of gas, and we walked over them eventually. They were defeated because we out-mechanized them. We just out-produced them, we outclassed them, and we out-fought them. But this is a part of, these played a vital role in that. They may look, by today's standards, an antiquated piece of junk, but in the right hands, they did a job that, even by today's standards, staggers people's imagination by what they did with what they had. Most of these trucks, wherever they were shipped, whether it was to Africa or Italy, England, the continent, were usually disassembled and put in wooden crates and then reassembled at wherever they were located by Army personnel in a pseudo-assembly line. The reason for it having a soft top is, one, the early trucks had a hard cab, and that was extensive use of metal. They needed to get around that, and so they came out with a soft top version. And the other reason was that Germany still had a substantial air force, and because of the nature of these vehicles, they're noisy, combat is noisy. In a steel cab, everything echoes. You can't hear an aircraft until it's too late. The chassis was shipped separate with the wheels. The engine was not installed. They did this on a regular basis everywhere they went, because it took up less room aboard ship. Those trucks that went assembled were deck cargo, and so you couldn't get that many aboard a ship, Liberty ship or Victory ship. And of course, a lot of these were shipped to Russia under the Lend-Lease program. And in later years, after the war, they were distributed to what became our NATO allies, which is where this truck came from, Belgium, and was in the NATO group there for a good number of years, and was brought into this country probably around 2001 or 2000. Want me to? My name is Mark Norman, M-A-R-K-N-O-R-M-A-N. I'm a resident of Jupiter, Florida. I have been for the past 25 years. Shortly after the end of the Second World War, approximately 1947 or 8, some ex-GIs got a contract to put water and sewer in our little town in New England. Everything they had was World War surplus, and most of their equipment were GMC trucks. So I was about 9 years old, and most of my friends were the same age. And here we were surrounded with these things all summer and a good part of the winter. And we attempted to drive these, although it was almost impossible because our legs were just not long enough. But we learned how to crank them along on the starter until they removed the batteries and everything. They were tired of us doing that. Anyway, at some point in time there, I made a mental note that someday I was going to own one of these trucks. And so more than 60 years went by. Approximately 60 years went by before that happened. First time in my life I bought something out of a picture. Big mistake, but I bought it, and it ended up here in Jupiter some 2 months later. So when I did see the heart surgeon on my last visit, he said, "What are you doing with yourself these days?" And I told him. He said, "If that's what makes you happy, go with it. That's fine." So the first truck that I bought was the 1943 soft top, short wheelbase GMC that now is completed, and its future will be with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. The truck's been completed approximately 4 years, and I've put probably maybe 1,400 miles on it, going to different events here in South Florida. Other than that, I don't drive it around on the weekends. That's not what one would call a cruising vehicle. Although things mechanical need to be used rather than sit. So if more than 30 days goes by, I do take it out and operate it just to keep the seals and get the fluids, get the things up to temperature. Once you were in the field, you did what worked for you. And I'm sure there was some ordnance outfit where the officer in charge, everything had to be by the book. This star had to be just so far here, just so far there, and that was that. But you'll find them with round rules, split round rules, all kinds of things. And this was just to identify it as a friendly vehicle. Why they didn't do it larger here, but this was the most common size on the side of this cab. On the hard cabs, they had them up to 25 inches in diameter. And a big one roundel on the hood for aircraft. There are a number of people that come up that have been in the military, and you get into some interesting conversations with those folks. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was at the Abacoa Town Center one night, and I had the truck in question, the soft top truck there, and a couple came up to me, and they were in their late 70s, and they were French, and they talked to me about did I know George Patton, the general? No, I didn't know George Patton, the general. I'm not old enough to. You're not? No, but you have this truck. Then I explained that my interest in it, I had restored it and everything. And they talked about where they lived in France. They lived under the occupation of the Germans. And that when George Patton showed up, he showed up in their front yard, and they were gesturing as to how he blustered all around. He was ordering his troops to do this, do that, do the other thing. But their whole yard was full of military vehicles. And so, of course, this truck got them. So you find people with some interesting stories, and they ask you why, what's it worth, what do you do with it? And so I explain essentially the same things that, no, I don't know what it's worth. It's worth if you were selling it, which I won't. They have certain values that could go anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, but there's not really an active market for completed vehicles. If you're the age you are, you're almost 75 years old. How did you do this? So if it's something you want to do, you find the ways to do it. And I said, one of these wheel and tire assemblies weighs about 125 pounds. I said, there's a way to maneuver them around by yourself. You can do it. You don't pick them up, but there's a way to maneuver them around. And yeah, there's 12 to each truck, and there's a lot of work involved, and so things don't go fast, but eventually they get done. There's always a point in time in any restoration project when you don't think it'll ever get done. My intention was never to pass these on, or this vehicle or any of the others that I've done, on to collectors. They're to go to museums, and not to someone that will speculate in them or trade them or something like that. And so that other people can see what it was what we could do in this country on relatively short notice. And the people that built these vehicles on the assembly lines were essentially unskilled people. So we got started on it, and there were some setbacks right away, things that would not come apart. I also really, when I got started, had no idea where I was going to get the parts for these things. I had no clue. I was going to get it all disassembled and then figure out what I needed. These particular 6x6s were used by the French Air Force as a primary vehicle up till 1986, over 35 years beyond their, or 45 years beyond their date of manufacture in many cases. And that just bespeaks of what a good vehicle they were, and still are, those in service there. But halfway through the project, I had various convincers stop by, and they said, "What are you going to do when this one's done?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "Well, you ought to do another one." So halfway through, we ended up buying another one. Well, you did what you had to do, whatever it was, and that's the mindset of all those guys of that era. They did a job. They did what had to be done, and so they learned to fabricate with virtually nothing on hand. Very clever people, very dedicated young men. I had it easy.